Every 50 years, the galaxy remembered what violence looked like when it was given rules and an audience. The galactic combat trials brought warriors from every known species to Horizon Ring, a neutral station built in the empty dark between three star systems. The station was old, older than most civilizations currently using it, and its arena could seat 200,000 spectators. For the species that won, the reward was simple and enormous: elevated trade rights, territorial claims, and political influence for the next 5 decades. Losing meant nothing changed, but winning meant everything did. 111 times the trials have been held. Humanity had never entered. Most species forgot humans existed between cycles. They were a young civilization on a single world, unremarkable in galactic terms, known mostly for being loud at diplomatic functions and eating things that should not be eaten. But this cycle, something changed. A human delegation arrived. The shuttle that docked at Horizon Ring was small and undecorated. No banners, no ceremonial guard, no war drums or chanting crowds. Just a quiet diplomatic team led by Ambassador Deli Osei, a tall man with gray at his temples and patience in his voice, and one fighter. Nadia Okafor stepped off the shuttle in black training clothes and flat shoes. She was 32 years old, average height, lean but not visibly muscular by galactic standards. She carried a single bag over one shoulder and looked around the docking bay with calm, dark eyes that took in everything and reacted to nothing that a Veshan journalist named Silly was broadcasting live from the arrivals platform. She had 4 eyes, all of them amused. She turned to her camera drone and said something that translated across 100 languages to roughly the same joke. The humans had sent a small female of their species, and the trials were apparently accepting charity entries now. The laughter carried across the station feeds. At the registration ceremony that evening, delegations from 18 species filled the Great Hall. Warriors stood with their teams, each one a physical statement of dominance. The Drenari delegation drew the most attention, as they always did. Their champion, Gorath, stood nearly 9 feet tall, his body covered in natural bone plates that served as living armor. He had won the last 4 trials. 80 years of dominance. No opponent had ever cracked his plating. Gorath noticed Nadia across the hall. It was hard not to notice her, because she was the smallest fighter in the room by a significant margin. He watched her for a moment, then laughed. Not a quiet laugh. A loud, theatrical, arena-ready laugh that turned heads across the entire hall. He pointed at her and said something to his attendants. The translator systems picked it up and spread it through the room. A gift round. They have given me a gift round to start. His attendants laughed. Other delegations laughed. Even some of the station staff smiled behind their hands. Nadia did not react. She was reading the tournament rules on a datapad, her expression the same as it had been since she arrived. Flat, focused, unbothered. Ambassador Osei stood beside her. He leaned close and said quietly that she did not have to do this. There was no shame in withdrawing. The political statement of entering was already made. Nadia looked at him. "I want to fight," she said. That was all. She registered. The biometric scan took her measurements, analyzed her bone density, muscle composition, reflexive response time, and natural weaponry. The system processed the data and assigned her a threat classification, Class 2, the lowest combat rating in the tournament. The system had scanned every fighter in the hall, and Nadia Okafor was, by every metric it measured, the weakest one present. The bracket was drawn according to tradition. The reigning champion always faced the lowest-ranked newcomer in the opening match. It was meant to be a demonstration, a reminder of what stood at the top. This cycle, that meant Gorath versus the human. The betting terminals activated within minutes. The odds settled at 500 to 1 against Nadia. A few humans on the station placed bets anyway, more out of loyalty than belief. The galactic audience treated the upcoming match as a warm-up, something to watch before the real competition began. Silly recorded a preview segment for the broadcast network. She described the opening match as a formality and suggested viewers use the time to get refreshments. Her 4 eyes sparkled with amusement as she spoke to in the Drenari camp. Gorath did not bother studying his opponent. His attendant Ren, a young Drenari who handled equipment and logistics, suggested reviewing the human combat data that existed in galactic archives. Gorith waved him off. There was nothing to review, he said. The fight would last seconds. Ren said nothing more. But he pulled up the data anyway on his own terminal. He read about human endurance, about their ability to regulate body temperature through sweating, about their unusually flexible joints, about their history of persistence hunting on their home world. He found it interesting, but not alarming. Interesting did not win fights against Drenari bone armor. That night, the station hummed with anticipation for the trials. Music played in the entertainment districts. Warriors from different species eyed each other in corridors. The air felt electric with the promise of combat and consequence that in a small, plain room in the human delegation quarters. Nadia Okafor sat on the floor. She wrapped her hands slowly and methodically, the way she had done 10,000 times before. The wrapping was a ritual, each layer tight and precise, each finger given exactly the right amount of support. She did not watch fight footage of Gorith. She did not study his record. She did not need to. She would learn everything she needed inside the arena in the first 2 minutes by watching how he moved. She finished wrapping her hands, flexed her fingers once, and went to sleep. Tomorrow, the galaxy would laugh at her. She planned to let them. The arena on Horizon Ring was built into the station's core, a vast circular pit surrounded by tiered seating that rose so high the upper rows needed magnification screens to see the floor. 200,000 seats, and every single one was filled. Species that had traveled weeks to reach the station packed the stands in clusters of color and shape and sound. The Veshan sections glittered with bioluminescent skin. The Torai delegation sat rigid and silent in their dark armor. The Drenari fans pounded the railings with their fists, making a deep rhythmic thunder that shook the lower levels. The opening match of the 112th Galactic Combat Trials was not supposed to matter. It was a formality, a demonstration. Everyone knew how it would end. Gorith entered first. The arena gate on the eastern side split open, and he walked through it like a king entering his throne room. His bone-plated body caught the overhead lights and reflected them in dull, ivory flashes. He wore no additional armor because he did not need any. His body was the armor. 9 feet of muscle and natural plating, for championship victories carved into the cultural memory of the galaxy. He roared at the crowd, and the crowd roared back with such force that the sound pressure registered on the station's structural monitors. Then the western gate opened. Nadia walked out in a fitted black suit designed for mobility, nothing else. No armor, no helmet, no weapons. Her hands were wrapped in simple cloth. She was 5 feet 8 inches tall and weighed 63 kilograms. Under the arena lights, surrounded by 200,000 screaming spectators and facing the most dominant combat champion in galactic history, she looked like exactly what the classification system said she was, Class 2. The weakest fighter in the tournament, that a ripple of laughter moved through the stands. Not cruel exactly, but dismissive. The kind of laugh reserved for something too small to take seriously. Silly, broadcasting from the commentator platform above the arena, narrated the entrance with practiced amusement. She described the human fighter's arrival as brave, but ultimately meaningless, and reminded her audience that the real competition would begin in the second round. The referee, a mechanical construct with no species loyalty, announced the rules. No weapons. No outside assistance. The fight continued until one combatant could not rise within a 30 count, or until one combatant surrendered. There were no other restrictions. The signal sounded. Gorith charged. He crossed the distance between them in 3 massive strides, his right fist already swinging in a horizontal arc that could shatter stone. It was his signature opening, the same move that had ended 11 fights in the first 5 seconds across his career. Nadia stepped sideways. The fist passed through the air where she had been standing. Gorith's momentum carried him 2 steps past her. He turned, surprised but not concerned. He swung again, a backhanded strike with his left arm. Nadia ducked under it. She moved with a fluid economy that wasted nothing. No extra steps. No dramatic dives. Just precise, minimal movement that placed her exactly where his attacks were not. Gorith attacked again. And again. Overhead smash. Lunging grab. Spinning elbow. Each one faster than the last. Each one drawing on techniques that had conquered the best fighters of a dozen species. Nadia avoided every single one that she did not strike back. Not once. For the first 2 minutes, she only moved. She circled him, ducked, sidestepped, leaned just far enough to let his fists pass by her face. Her eyes never left his body. She watched his shoulders for the loading of a punch. She watched his hips for the direction of a charge. She watched his feet for the shifting of weight that preceded every movement. She was reading him, learning every pattern, every habit, every tiny mechanical truth about how a Draenari champion fought. The crowd began to notice. The laughter faded first from the lower sections, where spectators could see her eyes. There was something in those eyes that did not belong to a victim. Something calculating and patient and deeply, unsettlingly calm. Gorith threw a combination that had broken a Torai warrior's spine in the previous trials. 3 rapid strikes, high-low high, with bone-plated fists moving faster than most species could track. Nadia slipped through the sequence like water through fingers. She was inside his reach for a fraction of a second, close enough to touch his chest, and then she was gone again, circling to his left. The arena was getting quieter. Gorith roared in frustration and launched himself at her with pure force, abandoning technique for overwhelming violence. His fist clipped her shoulder as she moved, and the glancing blow sent her sliding across the arena floor, her feet leaving streaks on the surface. The crowd inhaled. Nadia stopped sliding. She stood up immediately, rolled her shoulder once, and wiped a thin line of blood from her lower lip with the back of her wrapped hand. Then she smiled. It was a small smile. Quiet, not arrogant. It was the smile of someone who had just confirmed something she suspected. Silly's commentary had stopped. The broadcast was just her breathing and the ambient sound of 200,000 people holding their breath. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. The amusement was gone. The human, she said slowly, is still standing after a Draenari strike. In a diplomatic box, Ambassador Osei gripped the railing in front of him. His knuckles were pale. He said nothing got on the arena floor. Nadia Okafor settled into a new stance. Her weight shifted forward. Her wrapped hands came up in a guard position that no one in the arena had ever seen before. She was done watching. She was ready to hit back. Nadia moved first. It happened so fast that the spectators in the upper tiers only understood it from the replay screens. One moment she was standing in her new stance, weight forward, hands raised. The next she was inside Gorth's guard, past his reaching arms, underneath the arc of his defensive reflex. She struck his chest. It was a single punch, driven upward from her legs through her hips and in her fist, aimed at a specific point on his torso, where 2 bone plates met. Not the center of either plate, where the armor was thickest, but the seam. The narrow line of slightly softer tissue where the plates joined. The sound it made was unlike anything the arena had heard before. Not the dull thud of a fist against solid bone. Something sharper. Something that cracked. Gorith stumbled backward. 1 step. 2 steps. He looked down at his chest. The bone plate on the left side of his torso had a fracture running through it. A visible, undeniable crack in the armor that had never been breached in 112 cycles of the Galactic combat trials. The arena went silent. Not quiet. Silent. 200,000 beings from across the galaxy stopped making sound at the same moment, as if the air itself had been removed from the station. Then the noise came. It came all at once, a wall of sound so intense that Silly's broadcast equipment peaked and distorted. She was shouting something into her camera drone, but even she could not hear herself over the roar of the crowd. The betting boards froze. Every terminal on the station displayed the same error message as the odd calculation systems tried to process what had just happened and failed. Gorith touched the crack in his armor with one massive hand. He stared at it. Then he looked at Nadia with an expression that had never appeared on his face in a public arena. It was confusion. Genuine, unguarded confusion. He did not understand what had just happened, because what had just happened was supposed to be impossible. Nadia was already moving again. Gorith's confusion lasted exactly 2 seconds before something older and harder took its place. The showman disappeared. The entertainer who played to crowds and laughed at opponents vanished, as if he had never existed. What remained was the warrior underneath, the real one, the fighter who had won 4 championships not because he was loud, but because he was lethal, that he attacked with precision that made his earlier charges look clumsy. Targeted strikes aimed at her head, her ribs, her legs. Each one calculated to end the fight cleanly and immediately. Nadia could not dodge all of them. Not anymore. He was fighting seriously, and a serious Drenari champion was the most dangerous thing in the known galaxy. His fist caught her across the ribs. She felt something give inside her, and the pain was immediate and enormous. She twisted away, gasping, and his follow-up strike clipped her shoulder hard enough to spin her sideways. She hit the ground. The arena surged. She got up. Gorith came at her again. A knee strike aimed at her midsection. She partially blocked it, but the force lifted her off the ground and sent her tumbling across the arena floor. She got up. Blood was running from a cut above her eye. Her left side screamed with every breath. She could feel the damage accumulating, her body cataloging injuries that would have ended most fights. But her body was also doing something else. It was adapting. Every hit she took gave her information. The angle of his strikes told her where the next one would come from. The force of each impact told her which attacks he committed to and which ones he could redirect. She was building a map of him in real time, written in bruises and blood. She found her next target. She went inside again, faster this time because she knew his timing now. His right fist came down, and she moved under it, stepped past his leading leg, and drove her fist into the bone plate covering his right side. The second crack echoed through the arena. Gorith made a sound. Not a roar, not a battle cry. A sharp, involuntary grunt of pain as the fracture splintered through his armor. The Drenari delegation in the stands was standing. Every single one of them. Their ambassador, a broad-shouldered female with decades of diplomatic composure, had one hand over her mouth. Nadia did not stop. She could not afford to. She hit him again, targeting the lower plates near his hip. This strike did not crack the armor, but it drove into a point where the first fracture had weakened the surrounding structure. Gorith staggered. He grabbed at her with both arms. She was too close to dodge, and his hands closed around her midsection. He lifted her off the ground and threw her. Not gently, not theatrically. He threw her the way a desperate fighter removes a threat. She hit the arena wall. Hard. The impact drove the air from her lungs, and for a moment everything went white and distant. She slid down the wall and landed on the ground in a heap. The referee began watching. Not counting yet, just watching. Nadia lay still for 3 seconds. 5 seconds. In the broadcast booth, Silly was saying something about human durability, but her voice was shaking. Nadia planted one hand on the ground, then the other. She pushed herself up to her knees, then to her feet. Her left leg was not working properly. Something in her ribcage shifted with every breath. Blood dripped from her chin onto the arena floor. She raised her fist in the Drenari camp at the edge of the arena. Rin watched the human woman stand up. He had seen Gorith fight 47 times. He had never seen an opponent rise after being thrown into the wall. He felt something cold settle into his stomach, and he realized it was the first crack in everything he had ever believed about weaker species that on the arena floor, Gorith was breathing hard. His bone armor was fractured in 2 places. His body, built for explosive power, was not designed for prolonged combat. Nadia circled him slowly, blood on her face and absolute focus in her eyes. She was just getting started. The fight had gone longer than any opening match in the history of the trials. Records were being broken with every passing second, and the arena knew it. The screens above the seating tiers displayed the elapsed time in glowing digits, and the number kept climbing past marks that should have been impossible for a Class 2 fighter facing a 4-time champion. Gorith and Nadia circled each other in the center of the arena. Both of them were damaged. Both of them were bleeding in their own ways. Gorith's bone armor showed 2 visible fractures, and a network of smaller stress lines had begun spreading from the impact points like cracks in old glass. Nadia's left side was a landscape of bruises darkening in real time. She favored her right leg. Every breath cost her something, but neither of them had stopped. Gorith attacked first this time. A lunging overhead strike with both fists clasped together, brought down like a hammer. It was his finishing move, the technique that had ended his championship match against the Torai Fighter 6 trials ago. The force behind it could buckle structural steel. Nadia did not dodge. She stepped into it. The crowd gasped as she moved forward instead of sideways, closing the distance so that the strike landed on her shoulder instead of her skull. The impact drove her to one knee, and something popped in her shoulder joint. Pain flooded through her body in a hot, electric wave, but she was inside his reach now, exactly where she wanted to be. From her kneeling position, she drove a rapid series of punches into the gaps between his cracked armor plates. 3 strikes. 4. 5. Each one targeted the soft tissue beneath the fractured bone, and each one landed with the precision of someone who had spent 2 minutes studying every weakness in his body before throwing a single punch. Gorith roared that it was not a battle roar. It was pain. Real, unfiltered, involuntary pain. The sound tore through the arena and silenced everything else. In 4 championships and decades of public combat, nobody had ever heard Gorith express pain. The sound was so unexpected that several Drenari spectators in the front rows physically recoiled. The Drenari ambassador was no longer just standing. She was gripping the railing in front of her with both hands, and the composure she had built over a lifetime of diplomatic service was gone from her face. What remained was something raw and frightened. Silly was narrating, but her voice had changed completely from the amused commentary of the opening. She spoke in low, rapid sentences, describing what she was seeing as something that defied every combat classification system the galaxy had ever built. A class, 2 species was not supposed to be able to do this. The system said it was impossible. The arena said otherwise. Gorith lashed out in desperation. His massive hand caught Nadia around the torso, and he threw her again, sending her tumbling across the floor. She rolled 3 times and came to a stop near the center of the arena. The referee watched. The crowd watched. The entire Galactic Broadcast Network watched 0.10 seconds past 0.20 seconds. Nadia planted her hands flat on the arena floor. She pushed. Her arms shook. Her body fought against her. Every damaged muscle, every cracked rib, every torn piece of tissue inside her screamed at her to stay down. She stood up that it was not graceful. It was not dramatic. It was ugly and slow and painful, and it was the most terrifying thing 200,000 spectators had ever seen, because she should not have been able to do it. The damage she had taken was enough to keep any fighter on the ground. But she stood up anyway, because something inside humans did not know how to stop. Ambassador Osei was in the diplomatic box with tears running down his face. He did not wipe them away. He did not look away from the arena floor. He had pushed for humanity's entry into the trials against the advice of every political strategist on Earth, and he was watching a woman prove him right in blood. Nadia limped back to the center of the arena. Her left arm hung at a bad angle. Blood had painted half her face a dark, wet red. She raised her right fist. Just the one. It was all she had left to raise, and the crowd began to cheer. It started in the lower sections. Not the Drenari sections, but the smaller species. The ones who had been conquered and overlooked and dismissed. The ones who knew what it felt like to be classified as weak. They stood and they cheered for the human who would not stay down. The sound spread upward through the tiers. It caught fire in the middle sections, where species who had no stake in this fight joined in because they could not help themselves. It reached the upper levels, where even some of the Drenari spectators found themselves making noise, though they could not have explained why. The cheer became a roar. The roar became a wall of sound that shook the arena's foundations. On the floor, Gorith stood opposite Nadia. He was breathing in heavy, labored gasps. His species was built for explosive, short-duration combat. 10 minutes was a long fight for a Drenari. This fight had gone past 20. He looked at the human across from him. Small, broken, bleeding from a dozen wounds. Standing on a leg that should not support her weight, with one arm that would not rise and one fist that would not drop. And for the first time in his life, Gorith felt something he did not have a word for in his language. It sat in his chest like a weight, unfamiliar and uncomfortable. He would later learn that humans called it respect. He raised his own fists. The crowd reached a pitch that the station's acoustic systems had never recorded before. Both fighters at the center of the arena moved toward each other one final time. They met in the middle like two collapsing stars. Gorith swung first, a wide, arcing blow that carried the weight of his entire body behind it. Nadia ducked low, felt the displaced air brush across her scalp, and drove her right fist into the largest crack on his torso. The bone plate shifted under the impact, and Gorith hissed through clenched teeth. He brought his elbow down toward her spine. She twisted sideways, but not fast enough. The blow caught her across the back, and she stumbled forward, her vision flickering. She turned the stumble into a roll and came up facing him, gasping, still on her feet. The crowd was noise. Pure noise. It had stopped being cheering or roaring and had become a single sustained vibration that filled the arena like weather. Gorith pressed forward. He was slower now, his movements missing the explosive precision of the fight's opening minutes. But he was still powerful beyond anything Nadia had faced before. His fist caught her in the midsection, and she folded around the impact, her feet leaving the ground for a moment before she crashed back down. She got up, he hit her again. A sweeping backhand that caught her across the shoulder and sent her spinning. She got up. Each time she rose, the crowd's voice changed. It became something deeper and more frightened and more reverent, because what they were watching was not normal. It was not supposed to be possible. A body that damaged should not function. A fighter that broken should not stand. But she kept standing, and the galaxy did not know what to do with that information. Nadia found her rhythm in the wreckage of her body. She stopped trying to avoid every hit. She could not anymore. Instead, she chose which hits to take and which ones to answer. She let his fist graze her shoulder so she could step inside and strike the fractured plates beneath his arm. She absorbed a knee to her hip so she could drive her knuckle into the widening crack across his ribs. Gorith was making sounds now. Small, tight sounds of pain that escaped through his control. The cracks in his armor had spread. 3 plates were fractured. The tissue beneath was bruised and swelling, visible through the gaps like dark purple shadows under broken porcelain. He was not built for this. His species dominated through overwhelming force applied in short, devastating bursts. Their metabolism burned fast and hot, designed for fights measured in seconds or minutes. 25 minutes of sustained combat was uncharted territory for a Drenari body, and Gorith's systems were failing. Nadia's systems were failing too. But humans failed differently. Where Drenari power dropped like a cliff, human endurance eroded like a slope. Slow, gradual, stubbornly resistant to the end. Her ancestors had chased prey across open plains for hours under a burning sun, not because they were fast, but because they simply did not stop. That inheritance lived in her blood now, keeping her upright when everything said she should be on the ground. They traded blows at the center of the arena. Gorith landed a strike that split the skin above Nadia's ear. Nadia landed a strike that cracked a 4th bone plate on his forearm. He grabbed her arm, and she let him, using the grip as leverage to drive her knee into the soft spot at his hip joint. He released her and staggered sideways. Nadia saw the opening that it was small, and it would not last. His head was lowered from the pain of her knee strike, and his jaw, the one place on a Drenari skull that had no bone plate covering, was exposed. She set her feet. She loaded everything she had left into her legs, her hips, her back, her shoulder, and her fist. Every remaining ounce of energy in her broken, bleeding, stubborn human body traveled up through the kinetic chain and into her right hand. She threw the uppercut that it connected under Gorith's jaw with a sound like a door slamming in an empty building. His head snapped back. His feet left the ground. 9 feet and 400 kilograms of Drenari champion lifted into the air, hung there for a moment that the replay screens would immortalize, and then crashed to the arena floor. The impact shook the ground. Nadia staggered backward, her right hand screaming with fractures of its own from the strike. She could not have thrown another punch if her life depended on it. She stood swaying, barely upright, watching. Gorith did not move. 0.5 seconds. The arena was so quiet that Nadia could hear the mechanical hum of the referee unit approaching. 0.10 seconds. Gorith stirred. His fingers twitched against the arena floor. 0.15 seconds. He got his hands underneath him and pushed. His arms shook with the effort. He raised his torso a few inches, then a few more. 0.20 seconds. He made it to one knee. The Drenari sections erupted with desperate encouragement. Their champion was rising. He had to rise. He always rose. 25 seconds. Gorith looked at Nadia across the arena. Their eyes met. She saw something in his face that she recognized because she had worn the same expression a dozen times tonight. The expression of a fighter who had given everything and had nothing left that he collapsed. The referee counted to 30. Gorith did not rise. The mechanical voice echoed across the silent arena. Match concluded. Victor, Nadia Okafor. Species designation, human. The silence held for one breath. 2. 3. Then the arena came apart. Nadia did not hear the explosion of sound. She was already moving, limping across the arena floor toward Gorith. His attendants were rushing to him, Ren at the front. But Nadia got there first. She stood over the fallen champion and extended her hand. A human gesture. Palm open. Fingers offered. Gorith looked up at her from the ground. Blood and sweat, and something that might have been tears if Drenari could cry. He stared at her hand for a long moment. Then he took it. The arena went quiet again, just for a second, as the image burned itself into galactic memory. The smallest fighter the Trials had ever seen, helping the greatest champion rise to his feet. Ren watched from 3 steps away. His world was different now. He did not know what it had become, but he knew it would never be what it was before. By morning, the station was a different place. The corridors of Horizon Ring, which had buzzed with laughter about the human entry just 12 hours earlier, now buzzed with something else entirely. Every screen on every wall played the same footage on rotation. The moment Nadia's fist cracked Gorith's bone plate. The moment he fell. The moment she helped him stand. The footage had already reached the outer colonies. By the end of the day, it would reach the edge of known space that humanity's threat classification was under emergency review. 12 species had filed formal requests for human combat data. Military analysts who had never typed the word human into their databases were now building entire profiles around what they had witnessed. The Class 2 rating that the biometric system had assigned to Nadia was being discussed in classified briefings across the galaxy. Not because it was wrong by the system's metrics, but because the system's metrics were suddenly, obviously incomplete. Silly published her report from the broadcast booth, where she had spent the entire night writing. She had deleted her first 3 drafts because they sounded too much like the dismissive commentary she had opened the match with, and she refused to be that person anymore. The final version was stripped of performance and filled with honesty. She described what she had seen without trying to explain it, because she could not explain it. No one could. The report went viral within hours. It was translated into 400 languages by the end of the week. Ambassador Osei did not sleep that night. He did not need to. The diplomatic requests began arriving before the arena lights had dimmed. Species that had ignored humanity for decades, that had declined trade proposals and dismissed cultural exchange programs and politely suggested that humans were not yet ready for galactic participation, were now sending urgent communications. They wanted alliances. They wanted trade agreements. They wanted military cooperation pacts. They wanted to understand what they had just seen, and more importantly, they wanted to make sure it was on their side. Osei handled each request with the same calm patience he had always shown. He did not gloat. He did not remind anyone of their previous dismissals. He simply opened doors that had been closed for generations and let the galaxy walk through them. In the medical bay, Nadia lay on a treatment bed designed for species much larger than her. The alien medical technology worked efficiently on her injuries. 3 cracked ribs were stabilized. Her dislocated shoulder was reset. The fractures in her right hand were sealed with bonding compounds that would dissolve as the bone healed naturally. The cuts on her face were closed with precision instruments that left no scars. She was quiet through all of it. A nurse from the Veshan delegation, who had volunteered to assist because she wanted to see the human up close, asked Nadia how she was feeling. Hungry, Nadia said. The nurse did not know what to do with that answer. Gorith came to the medical bay in the afternoon. He walked slowly, his own injuries treated, but still evident in the careful way he moved. The 2 new cracks in his armor would heal over the next several months. The older fractures in his pride would take longer. He stood beside Nadia's bed. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Gorith said that he had fought 112 opponents across 4 championship cycles. He said that Nadia was the first one who made him understand why fighting mattered. Not for the crowd, not for the glory, but because some fights revealed what a being truly was, and she had shown him something about humans that he would never forget. Nadia looked up at him. She said he was the hardest thing she had ever hit, and she had once punched a concrete wall during a training accident in Lagos. Gorith considered this. Then he laughed. A real laugh, not the theatrical arena laugh. A genuine, surprised sound that came from somewhere honest. Rin was standing near the doorway. He had followed Gorith without being asked, because he did not want to be anywhere else. After the champion left, Rin lingered. He had a question. He had been carrying it since the fight, and it would not let him go. He asked Nadia how she kept getting up. Nadia was quiet for a while. She stared at the ceiling of the medical bay as if the answer might be written there. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy, she said. They are not the fastest or the toughest or the most naturally armored. They are average in almost every measurable way. But they have one thing that the classification systems do not measure. They do not know when to stop. That IT is not courage, she said. Courage is a decision. This is different. This is something built into the bones. When a human body is broken and the brain says to stay down, something deeper says to get up. It is not logical. It is not strategic. It is just how they are made. Rin thought about this for a long time after he left. The tournament continued over the following weeks. Nadia fought 3 more opponents after Gorith. She won 2 of them, both against fighters ranked far above her classification, both through the same method of patient observation followed by devastating precision. She lost her 3rd match to a Veshan grappler who neutralized her striking by taking the fight to the ground. She finished the trials in 3rd place overall, but nobody remembered the final standings. Everyone remembered the opening match. The day a class, 2 species cracked the unbreakable armor. The day the lowest-ranked newcomer in tournament history defeated the greatest champion the galaxy had ever produced. The day 200,000 spectators watched a woman the size of a Drenari child refuse to stay on the ground. Months later, a new species applied to enter the next Galactic combat trials. The registration official asked them why. Their ambassador, a small being from a world that had never been taken seriously by the galactic community, said they watched what the human did to Gorith. They said that if a Class 2 species could do that, then the rankings meant nothing. Then strength meant nothing. Then anything was possible for anyone. The official processed the application without comment. Somewhere on Earth, in a gym in Lagos that smelled like sweat and old rubber, Nadia Okafor wrapped her hands. Left hand first, then right. Each layer tight and precise, each finger given exactly the right amount of support. The same ritual she had performed 10,000 times before the trials and would perform 10,000 times after. She did not know she had changed the galaxy. She did not think about rankings or classifications or diplomatic consequences. She thought about the next training session, the next opponent, the next fight. She was just doing what humans do. She was refusing to quit.